Good afternoon, everybody listening in. Good welcome also to our speakers. Welcome to this session on co-creation projects that have been running over the last few months. We have 5 speakers in a very short time. They will present within 5 minutes, and there should be ample of time afterwards to pose questions. Again, I'd like, as repeatedly said before, please post these questions in the Slido. The Slido will be in the chat. I'm Jos van Wezel. I'm chairing the session this afternoon. I work at KIT and also in the EOSC Secretariat. The session this afternoon is a result of the co-creation activity that EOSC Secretariat has done over the last couple of years. These co-creation actions were started and were done, and they had to be related to the work of the EOSC Secretariat in order to support the EOSC governance. And this has to be done specifically within the context of activities of the working groups. So the projects that have applied for co-creation funding, they had to engage with stakeholders, they had to do coordination activities, or they were involved in supporting services for the working groups. They did analysis, they did studies, and overall, they did some communication dissemination. So everything that made EOSC great again. The work in these projects indeed contributed largely to the understanding of EOSC and what we know of EOSC today. I'd like to move on to the first speaker, who is Carlos Luis Parra-Calderón. He is he works in the public health system of Andalusia, and as a researcher, he is working on the advancement of biomedical informatics and applies this to the innovation and healthcare in Andalusia, in Spain, and even beyond. Carlos Luis, please go ahead. The slides are already there for you. Okay. And remember, everybody, to mute. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to present the advance of my activity. The name of the activities is the alignment of EOSC strategy implementation plan with United States NIH strategic plan for data science. Next slide, please. The objectives of work of this activity is about to identify similarities and difference between 2 important studies about data science in the health research domain. In this case, between US NIH data science strategy and the EOSC strategy. The EOSC strategy is a general objectives related to the science, but in this case I address the health research, and the idea is this alignment must be related to the 5 EOSC working groups, and with particular relevance to the scope of application of the FAIR principles. I work in public documents and analyze public documents, and this action is currently in develop, and the schedule is to be completed by November 30 this year. Next slide, please. Main activities of this activities in deep analysis of the NIH study plan for data science and comparison with the EOSC study implementation plan and other related documents. And in these last weeks, months, we need to incorporate new documents because EOSC study is very intense, developed intense activity, and deliver new documents, new versions of relevant documents that I incorporate in all time to analyze. I analyze document, annotate some relevant terms and frequency of these terms into the document, And also I work in ontology between these concepts. And the main task is to develop one plan to align the specific action and recommendation between the NIH and EOS. Finally, I will design one list of proposals about communication, one short communication plan. And next slide, please. And finally, the main result finding in these activities is this cooperation action aims to influence the two strategies. The idea is how can in this time can influence to try to align the two strategies between US and Europe. And contacts have already been initiated with Susan Gregory's team. Susan is the NIH Associate Director for Data Science and Director of the NIH Data Science Strategy Office. And yesterday we have a meeting. The idea is it will focus on working on interoperability of FAIR digital objects for health research, always as well as on interoperability interfaces between EOS and NIH infrastructures. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carlos Luis, for this presentation. I do have a question in between. Did this relate in? I mean, was there any relationship with the COVID case during the time that you were doing this study?
Specifically, I don't work in a specific document related to COVID-19, but we identified the possibility to collaborate in the framework of Research Data Alliance. I think Research Data Alliance can be one framework to work maybe in COVID-19 case, because last month Research Data Alliance developed intense effort to implement one big working group with a lot of sub-working groups related to COVID-19. I participate in some of these, and maybe can be one interesting use case to work, because also we know an important effort about in interoperability organizations like HL7 and ISO to implement a set of data to define set of data about epidemiology information, about clinical information related to COVID-19 domain.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there is some exposure there. Thank you so much. Next presentation is by Aliaksei Kulik. He is a software architect and also co-founder of a company, DEIP. That is a company, DEIP, and they have a blockchain technology, and it's based in Silicon Valley, if I'm correct. And they provide digital infrastructures and accelerate with that innovations in general. Aliaksei will tell us about the decentralized assessment of FAIR data sets. Aliaksei, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for introduction. Hello, everyone. So I want to start with a quick intro about how we end up with this co-creation activity. So we are building tools for research and innovation processes, and our core technology is our decentralized assessment system, which allows to crowdsource experts' opinion on different technologies and data and research, and to have a quantified metric of its quality. So we saw a good alignment with EOSC interest group on researcher engagement and use cases. And also we see that in open science policy platform, it's one of the core elements is to have a good incentives and rewards, and also to have a new metrics and indicators. So we have applied for this co-creation activity, and our main objective for it were to develop and deploy an open collaborative platform where people can review FAIR datasets. With this platform, we wanted to test how reputation-based incentives for reviewers can improve the quality and objectivity of review, and how it helps to prevent various gaming techniques. We also wanted to validate how we can extend FAIR data metadata with various metrics of quality and reliability of these data sets. And we also wanted to, in general, understand the benefits of open science community from utilization of collective intelligence for assessment of data sets. Next slide, please. So we have two main tracks of activities. It's general activities that we wanted to fulfill during this co-creation. So we wanted to survey and communicate with various research communities to discover what is the process and criteria they are currently using to assess data sets quality and reliability. We wanted to deploy the collaborative platform and to adjust it according to the feedback we gather from communities to more precisely fit their needs. And we wanted to make a general report on the efficiency of the decentralized assessment for FAIR datasets. Currently, we have undergoing activities. One is technical activity, is deployment and development of a collaborative platform, which is almost ready and ready to be deployed soon. And the second activity is we are still looking for more partners to join the platform. So if anyone is interested, feel free to contact me, and I will show a demo, give you more information, and we will be happy to if you join our test. Next one. So we have some findings and results already. Interesting finding is that we discovered that collaborative assessment platform is very needed, especially within citizen science activities, because there is a big need to assess a data that is produced by citizens, and these data should be assessed by scientists. And we also we also see that current incentives for reviewers and researchers, they are still incorrect or even lacking in some communities. So to date, we also have some significant results. We already spoke to various communities and gathered their feedback, and they are already joining our platform test. We still adjusting and modifying our assessment system according to the feedback to make it more suitable for research communities and to be more aligned with EOSC interests. And as I mentioned already, we developed and preparing to deploy the platform itself, and the live demo is already available, and it will be deployed for production soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aliaksei. It's an interesting activity there. I must also say to the audience that many of the projects, if not all that we're presenting today, are still in their are still active. They're gathering their information and they're working on the finalization, which brings me to the next topic that their results are, of course, although Aliaksei is in a company, the results will be made public and are all as it says, is open, and they're open for everybody to use.
Yeah, definitely.
And this accounts for all the activities that were done with respect to the co-creation fund. Will you post your mail address, Aliaksei, in the chat maybe, so that people can contact you for additional candidates to try? Then we will move on to the next speaker, which is Nadica Miljković. She is from the University of Belgrade. Nadica is an electrical and computer science engineer and is also professor of biomedical equipment and engineering at the Department of Signals and Systems at the School of Electrical Engineering of the University of Belgrade. I hope I said it right.
Yes, it's a long affiliation.
Yes.
Thank you.
But even more impressive. So, you will inform us about your project about boosting EOSC readiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, today I'm going to tell you something about our project, Boosting EOSC Readiness, creating a scalable model for capacity building in research data management. So you can change slide, please. Thank you. Our objectives are to increase EOSC readiness and to increase it in order to use EOSC resources and services and to contribute to them. So we are aiming at creating a scalable model for the South Slavic speaking non-EU Western Balkan countries. And why we do that for this region? Because we have similar research communities, we share the same or similar challenges, and we use similar or the same language. This is just the photo impression of the University of Belgrade Rectorate. So I think we can go to the next slide. So our main activities for the period from July to October are that we created a Serbia.rdm website with guidelines in Serbian. And for these guidelines, we've been in constant contact with the stakeholders at the University of Belgrade, but also with the stakeholders at the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development. We've created a questionnaire for librarians, it's still active, in order to foster RDM adoption by librarians. And we have also created a data management plan template for our science fund in Serbia. And currently we are collecting feedback from researchers. And some of the major questions and issues that researchers are experiencing for DMP are they're not quite sure what is secondary data. They're not sure if they can change their DMP during the data life cycle. They're concerned about legal issues because they want to align them with the local with the legal issues of the European Union, but also to our legal legislation. And believe it or not, many of them are concerned about naming conventions for their data files. And we've got a very good feedback because they're interested in this and they think it's useful. And currently we have installed Dataverse repository, its first data repository at the University of Belgrade at our computing center, but it's not available online because we have an ongoing customization. Next slide. So this is just an impression of how this website guideline looks like. It's in our local language and something you cannot see. If you scroll down this website, you are going to see there is a CC license. Well, that's a scalable model, so anyone can adopt it, translate it, or use it as is. So also on the next slide, I've created similar image of our questionnaire, and you can see at the bottom left CC mark because anyone can reuse this questionnaire for librarians. Next slide. So we aim to build a model for local capacity building in RDM and also to create a scalable technical solution with the Dataverse. Of course, we cannot solve all the problems, but we can try to compensate for the current delay in adopting both open research data and FAIR policies in non-EU Western Balkan. And we are aiming at both researchers and librarians. And for the last slide, I just wanted to name that this is a small team of 5 people, but very effective. So that's from me.
Thank you so much, Nadica.
Thank you.
Very well. It's interesting to see that that you actually have a lot of response from researchers regarding also the legal issues. Personally, I'd be interested in that as well because of our work that we're doing in a different project. So for sure, we'll contact you. Thank you again. We'll postpone other questions till after the presentations have finished, and we'll move on to the next presenter, which is Tiberius Ignat. He is the director of Scientific Knowledge Services, a company with locations in Munich and in Budapest and Sofia, and they specialize in helping the European libraries to embrace new technologies, and they also incent them with new ways of working. He will tell us about a study that involved research libraries and EOSC. Tiberius, go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Just a second, maybe the slides. Yeah. I'll have a second. It's a huge effort, all these things, managing 20 things together.
Here it is.
Here we go.
Here we go. So, hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Tiberius Ignat, and I run Scientific Knowledge Services, which is a small company which works with research organizations and publishers as well for disseminating trustful knowledge and for making the transition to open science. This is a short presentation for a project which has the ambition to inform the EOSC working groups about the role of libraries in EOSC and what libraries expect from EOSC to be and to support their traditional and new services. Next slide, please. 2 organizations partnered to submit the proposal for this project is LIBER, the European Association of Research Libraries, a network of more than 450 national university research libraries developed through more than 50 years of collaborations. And Scientific Knowledge Services, as presented before, a small company which works with research organizations to help them making transition to open science. We signed the contract on July 24th this year. Next slide, please. All right, what are the objectives and which needs we will be addressing? Through 5 elaborated workshops, we will bring together mainly 2 EOSC stakeholder groups that represent end users and research academic libraries, and the second one, the researchers. The discussion will focus on the following aspects. What is the value of EOSC for researchers and research libraries based on the goals and the work of the EOSC working groups? What kind of input is needed from these stakeholders towards the EOSC working groups? How can these stakeholder groups be actively involved in activities of EOSC groups? And what do they need to get involved? What sort of feedback mechanism could be built for continuously inform EOSC in its quest to remain an agile infrastructure? So these are the needs that we look to address. Next slide, please. Our main activities are very simple: 5 workshops distributed across regions and disciplines, 10 presentations within these workshops, 6 reporting sessions, which will lead to the 6 reports which will inform the EOSC working groups. The 6 reporting sessions are following the 5 workshops as presented, and a final reporting session, the 6th, which will encompass all the reports. The 5 workshops that we aim to organize, we will organize, are 3 of them regionally based, which is Southern Europe, 1 workshop, Central and Eastern Europe, another workshop, and Northern Europe, a 3rd workshop. And 2 of them will be disciplinary, 1 for multidisciplinary universities and the other one for technical universities. Next slide, please. A number of activities are designed to make this project successful. We called, please, previous slide. I would like to insist before speaking, previous, yes. We launched a call for speakers, another call for rapporteurs. We will select participants to ensure a rich conversation during these workshops. We don't want to make these workshops that big so that we miss having a deep conversation. And then we are also part of activities. We are designing the format of these events to be innovative and to create this rich, deep conversation, which goes beyond just presenting some ideas and slides, goes more into the discussion and the interaction that we will have with the experts. Next slide, please. Now we come back to the main result of this project is a series of 6 reports, which will inform the EOSC working groups, as described before. Very quickly, what is the value of EOSC for researchers and research libraries based on the EOSC working group goals? What input is needed from these stakeholders? How can these stakeholders be actively involved in EOSC, and what do they need to be involved? And what feedback mechanisms could be built to create continuously information so that EOSC remains an agile infrastructure. So this is it in a nutshell. Thank you for listening. We are happy, of course, to engage in further discussions, and you can see here my contact details. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Tiberius. Yes, if the slides are not already uploaded to the portal, to the EOSC Secretariat portal, then they will. So the information will also be there available. Before I forget, I also need to tell you that we had over 80 approved co-creation activities running during the period, and the ones that are presenting yesterday, today, and tomorrow are selected for various reasons. And one of the biggest is, of course, that they are excellent projects, but also they're very appealing to what they did. There's more, and the information will be available what they did in due time. So we'll move now to the last speaker of this afternoon's session, who is Arofan Gregory. Arofan, if I'm correct, you're not. First of all, we cannot see him because he has a technical hiccup, but he is there and listening. But I was wondering, are you in Europe, or you are in the United States?
I'm in the United States, just north of Boston is kind of where I got locked down.
So you see, sir, it's very early for him. But that didn't hold him back from presenting today. Arofan is an IT consultant, and he specializes in statistics and research data, and he's also a member of the team that worked on this project. The project being the cross-domain integration from the Data Documentation Initiative. Arofan, please tell us your insight. Thank you.
Yes, I work part-time with the Data Documentation Initiative Alliance and part-time with CODATA, which is the data arm of the International Science Council based in Paris. If you can go to the first slide, please. Basically, what I'm talking about really is cross-domain data sharing. To give you a couple examples of how we see this requirement emerging, DDI works a lot with the SESTA archives, the social science data archives in Europe. It's one of the ERICs. And increasingly, we see a demand for different types of data coming from different domains being used in a single research project. From the CODATA perspective, people tend to talk about this as the global grand challenges. So things like COVID-19 in terms of infectious disease, or resilient cities, disaster risk reduction in the Sendai framework under the UN and the SDGs. There are lots of these kinds of challenges today, and something they all have in common is that they are inherently cross-domain in terms of the data required to do the research and come up with policy and come up with useful findings. Because EOSC is an infrastructure of a certain kind, we see that it has a role to play in the kind of research that I'm describing, which is to say you have a lot of demand for cross-domain data. DDI-CDI is a metadata specification of a new type. It's coming from the DDI Alliance, which traditionally has done domain standards for the social sciences. But DDI-CDI, the cross-domain integration standard, is not a domain standard. It is a generic standard that looks at dealing with the problems of cross-domain data sharing in a couple of ways. One of these is around increasing the context for data. Data coming from outside a domain is often unfamiliar to users, and by providing much more detailed provenance and process information, you can begin to increase the context around it and make it more usable. Another major focus is to allow for easier integration of different types of data. We have today big data, sensor data, multidimensional data, survey data, event history data, all kinds of different kinds of data looking to be integrated into a single sort of research platform. And by tracking the roles played by individual data points in different structures, we can actually automate and make much easier the integration of different types of data in a single research project. So that's sort of the focus of the standard. Next slide, please. In terms of the project activities, obviously the EOSC clusters are important stakeholders here. We're talking with the EOSC interoperability framework that's a part of the FAIR working group, with the metadata catalog integration team out of FAIR. We're also meeting with people from some of the RDA working groups and CODATA working groups under the Decadal program, with various people in GoFair, FIPS, Fair Data Objects, the Fair Data Point conversation, and also with some specific standards groups and implementers. And the idea here is that we will be having interviews, sort of structured interviews with all of these stakeholders. We're going to have a general virtual meeting in mid-November. So this is a project that's really just getting underway. The idea is to have follow-ups with specific groups after that meeting and to proceed from there. Next slide, please. The project goals are really threefold. We see the main outputs as being recommendations for how this metadata spec could be applied within an EOSC context. And it's obviously too early to say what the findings will be, but we see them probably occurring in three areas. One of them is in enhancing the navigability and findability of data, particularly where you have granular dependencies between data sets, because most metadata schemas don't actually capture those, and we do. To reduce the time and effort for data integration. It can be incredibly expensive in order to integrate particularly unfamiliar data, and that's something that can be reduced and partially automated. We're looking at enhancing the usability of data by improving provenance information and data context at a detailed level, and simply making data easier to use. So that's one set of outcomes. But this is not a one-way street. We also see the EOSC as presenting useful requirements back to the DDI-CDI Development Committee. The specification is in approaching its final stages, but it's not a final development yet. And that means that part of this activity is really consultative. We want to engage with the EOSC infrastructure community and take whatever requirements we find back to the people who are building the standard to make sure that EOSC's needs are met. And I think that the DDI is very interested in supporting EOSC in this way. The third outcome is really more of a futures thing. When the day comes when all of the unfair data in Europe is suddenly fair, we're going to have a new problem. And that problem is going to be a problem of scale. And we have to look forward from an infrastructure perspective to how we will solve challenges that involve vast amounts of data. And one of the things and one of the strengths of DDI-CDI is that it is designed to support automation, whether that's machine learning, other kinds of techniques, because automated solutions will be needed to deal with the problems of scale that we're actually building for ourselves. And so we see that not as an immediate concern, but as a future one, but still an important one to look at as part of this project. Last slide, please. The head of this project is Simon Hodson. He's the managing director of CODATA. He's actually in the audience, I believe. That's his email. And if you'd like to attend the general webinar or contact us with questions or engage, you're welcome to do that. That's Simon's email, so you can just write to him there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arofan. Indeed, Simon is in the audience, and he already posted comments and additions to the chat. So please copy it from there. Also, his email address is there. Thank you all speakers. I think we should now move over to the questions. We have 10 minutes left. Questions that have been coming in through through Slido. I'm looking a bit in the chat as well. I cannot find any real questions there, so we'll move over to the Slido. I'll start on the bottom here. Bert Meerman of GoFair asks on the question if there are already areas where EOSC can learn from NIH, Carlos Luis. You're still muted. No, you're.
Sorry, I don't know. I don't see the question about.
Okay, well, the question, I'll read it loud. It's not a problem. Have you already seen areas where EOSC can learn from programs in NIH?
Yes, I think the FAIR is about NIH Data Commons. It's not specifically about FAIR, but I think NIH have strong experience about working in complex data types in biomedical domain. I think can be one important experience to learn. Also, the Big Data for Knowledge is one big program with large experience in NIH. Can be interesting to identify some good practice and other not very good practice and to take result and identify the risk. It can be interesting.
Okay, thank you. And there is another question from Bert. He asks, Aliaksei, do you have any idea, or do you have an idea to improve the incentive system for researchers and reviews? Now, I would like to add there, piggybacking on this question, these incentives and rewards that you have, that you are testing, right? Could you give a little bit more detail how that works, and then go on to the question that Bert asks, how do you want to improve this incentive system?
Yeah, okay. That's a good question, actually. Thank you. So I'm not sure where to start. Maybe I will start with from the problems with incentive system we currently have from our point of view, and then I will describe how we see how we can improve it and what we do for this. So the main problem we currently see is that incentive system is built in such a way that it like favors quantity over quality of any scientific contribution that is created. And this is the main problem that we try to solve. And we want to make like researchers and reviewers to think more about the quality of any of their contributions, whether it's like publishing data, publishing papers, or reviewing these data or papers, and to make it possible, we developed our system, and it is based on a reputational system. So any contribution within our system, it is rewarded depending on its quality. And even reviews, being scientific contributions of a different kind itself, it also can be like curated and assessed by the scientific community. And it means that if, for example, a reviewer made like a bad job, he was or he or she was like not very accurate with its review, and like final consensus that community like reached about the quality of reviewed data, it is far from reviewer's assessment. So reviewer may like lose his virtual reputation. Or if review was like more accurate, the most accurate, he will get more review. And any contribution is rewarded with reputation. So this is like our assumption that how we can improve the system, and we actually doing these pilots to validate this, but we think it's like a starting point where we should move.
Clear. Thank you, Aliaksei. And there is a question in the Slido for Nadica regarding DMP. Have you been in contact with teams in Prague, for instance, Robert Pagel, who has built a good machine actionable FAIR data management DMP wizard?
Oh, thank you for the question. We've been looking for different solutions, and we've checked DMP Online, DMP Tool, and Argos from the OpenAir project. And currently, we are in contact with the people from Argos. But I would gladly check this solution. I think this is the right timing to give a proposal of such solution. I didn't know about it before, and I just opened the paper from 2019. So I definitely think that I have everything needed to explore it further with my team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There is a question, I think it was also to Aliaksei, I missed that one. And the question is, why limit the approach that you use to assessments of fairness? It could be used to also to evaluate metadata quality and dataset quality.
So actually, when we started thinking of this co-creation activity, we were like thinking of assessment of fairness, as you mentioned. But later on, when we started to talk to scientific communities, we discovered that it may be even more useful to evaluate the metadata and to apply it for different areas of data sets. So this is exactly what we are currently doing. We are expanding our assessment system with more flexible customizations of criteria and for different types of data, for different types of metadata, and so on. So we're trying to make it applicable for more things, not just fairness. But this is like a good comment, and we already working on this.
Thank you. So, and there is another question for Arofan regarding dependencies between data sets. Can you give an example or explain why this is not captured in the metadata? It's a technical question.
Certainly. I think there are really two levels on which a lot of existing standards fail. Often the interesting dependencies between data sets exist at the variable level. People when they reuse data, they'll reuse it at the variable level, and they might want to know that a particular variable is a derivation based on other variables. Now, there are metadata standards that can express that, although not generally used. And the issue here is understanding exactly how that is done. DDI-CDI actually describes things like derivation and the transformations between data sets that are very difficult to describe in traditional metadata standards. And so that's a big part of that picture. Another aspect of it, though, is simply that very often there will be documentation around the provenance saying this data set was based on these other data sets. That's not machine actionable in a lot of cases because you don't have a link that is formal that can be navigated easily by, say, a cataloging system. And those things, by making them explicit in DDI-CDI, make it easier to navigate and to use those kinds of links and to understand what they are. And so it's not 100% this kind of information is never captured. It's that it typically is not captured in the kinds of metadata that we see most of the time. And DDI-CDI emphasizes that kind of linkage in a way that most other metadata standards do not.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very good that these things are also being standardized, I'd say. Yeah, we're coming to an end of this meeting. That was a very interesting thing. One final remark. There is a question in the Slido that says that 3 out of the 5 presented projects are reports, and whether the EOSC actually does need these things to match them. And there was a question: couldn't these activities be better and used for more service for researchers? Well, of course, yes and no. But we have seen that all of these activities actually contributed to what, as I said before, what is EOSC now. But it also contributed to where additional effort should be put into, so that services can actually be brought into the system. So it's a provisional activity that has been proven very useful, and as I said before, we will have all the results of these activities gathered in a huge on the web, so that you can leaf through this and try to learn from what has been collected, and all these pilots and innovative ideas have collected for us. Let me finish by thanking all the speakers again. Thank you very much for your effort, not only today, but also and your colleagues in the teams that worked on these applications during the time. And I'll close the session here. Thank you all for listening and your questions. Bye-bye.